Welcome to Business Over a Brew, the show where we talk business with some of the Riverbend's most interesting and influential business leaders, all while enjoying a nice brew at Elijah P's Burgers and Brews in Alton. I'm your host, Nick Dahr. In this two-part episode, we'll talk to Sam and John Roberts of Roberts Motors. They'll tell us about the history of the business, what's made them so successful, how they've kept up with technology, and the importance of community involvement to the entire Roberts Motors family. So let's get to it. It's the Business Over a Brew podcast from Elijah P's. John and Sam Roberts, welcome to Business Over a Brew. Appreciate you coming in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers.
Appreciate do anything for a free beer.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's how we get people on the show, basically, because it's certainly not the appeal of talking to me. Sam, I wanted to start with you. If you could just talk a little bit about the history of Roberts Motors and when it got started and why you got into it.
Well, Roberts Motors started in 1949 in Woodruff, Illinois, as a DeSoto Plymouth dealer. And Bill Roberts, of course, is the one that started it. And previous to that, he worked with his dad on the Bolivar over in St. Louis with the DeSoto Plymouth deal. And then in 1951, Bob, Bill's dad, or Byron, what some people call him, he sold his dealership over to Bolivar and came with Bill. So then the two of them had Woodruff, and he had DeSoto Plymouth. 63, they moved to Alton, Illinois, the old National Food Store, which is now Markel Rope and Rigging. So we were in
on
there,
Broadway and Alton, right?
On Broadway. So we were there from 63 until 74. And when the time he got up to the Alton store there, in 63, DeSoto was gone and it was called Chrysler Plymouth. So we had Chrysler Plymouth there, and then also he had some import called from Europe. It was an Avondale or something like they called it, four-door sedan, and it had GMC truck. So I went to work for Bill in 65, hired me in 64, and believe it or not, he hired me out of a grocery store. I worked for A&P from 54 to 64 and through high school, and of course I took care of Bill and his wife at the grocery store. So Bill, through my dad, talked me into interview and talked me to come and work for him. And I bought gotta be honest, bought a couple Chevrolets in between. I didn't even know it was a Chrysler Plymouth deal. And I told Bill, I said, nah, I really don't think so. I said, I've got a good spot with A&P. I'm young and got a good position, making good money. And old Bill, he says, well, think it over and come back and see me. So I went back and talked to him, and he says, have you made up your mind? And I said, Bill, what bothers me? I says, I know how car guys are. And I said, I don't think I can handle that. And he said, well, let me tell you something, Sam. He said, if you can't sell everybody that comes in the way you'd sell your mom and dad, I don't want you. So we got started on that, and then we got talking about money and all that stuff. And I said, man, I don't know if I can do that. And he says, well, what'd you make last year? And I told him. He says, how about if I guarantee you that the first year? And I said, really? I said, what about if I come work for you a week and I leave? He said, I'll still give you a full year. And he said, here's the name of my attorney, and he says, go talk to him, he'll draw papers. I said, hey, Bill, where I come from, a handshake's better than a piece of paper. And that's how we started. And he gave me $15 and told me to go buy a desk and a chair. And I bought a desk and a chair out of the cave down at the old Bluff City Brewery. You know where this is on, what is that street? Pearl Street?
Okay.
It's, it's right on the other side of the cemetery.
Okay, right.
And so anyhow, somebody had them stored in there. And so I ended up with a desk and a chair, $15. Went back to the dealership and I says, where am I going to put it? He says, move my desk over and put it in here. 7 years we sat looking at each other.
And if memory serves, you and Bill were not related.
No relation.
Right?
My dad was a police
just
officer.
Same last
Cotton
name,
Roberts,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
You get a lot of arguments about that, though.
Right.
A lot of people insist they have to be.
Just a coincidence. So that was a pretty good decision on your part to go ahead and make that move. So
especially since A&P left town 2 years after I went to work for Bill.
Right. And then obviously, now you two are related, father and son. John, how did you get started in the business? Was it something you always knew you'd do growing up, or was it something you thought, I'm never going into the car
No,
business?
actually, I said I wasn't going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, if some of my friends in high school would tell you, I always said, I'm not going to car business. I'm not working for my dad.
Right.
That's the main thing.
Right,
I
yeah.
work for my dad.
I was actually going to Lewis and Clark, and I was working at Racks, showing our radio.
Sure, yeah.
And had some, just got to where I really did enjoy fast food.
Mm-hmm.
And so matter of fact, I know the amount because I came in one day and was talking to him. I said, I just can't do this anymore. I said, I'm making $65 every 2 weeks. If I can make that here, doing whatever you need done,
Mm-hmm.
I'll work here. So I started mowing grass, cleaning cars, helping my brother clean the shop and whatever needed to be done.
Cleaning out the grease pits.
Yeah, cleaning out the grease pits. And I got my third quarter, because there were quarters at Lewis and Clark at the time, so I was going to Lewis and Clark. And it was binary electronics. I remember, because electronics is what I thought I wanted to do. And I'm in that class, and the teacher says, okay, guys, this is it. This is what you're going to be doing the rest of your life. And I hated it. So I'm at work, at the store, and I'm thinking, what am I going to do? I can't, just because this electronic stuff's not going to work for me. And I get thinking, I'm like, Dad's got this business here, family business, looks like I think I could do this, I think I'd be okay. And actually, one of the deciders for me, I was a very shy kid in high school, growing up altogether. And I knew that as I grew up, I had to get through that. So I thought, what better way than if I had to sell if I had to get out there and talk to people and make a living, I'm going to either get through it or I'm going to die.
Right.
So I thought, why not? So, I mentioned wanting to get into sales, and his sales manager at the time threw me the wolves, helped me walk me through it, got my training on the fly, and been with it ever since. That was 85, I think 85. I worked part-time before 85, but that's when I was really there all the time.
So there must have been a little reservation about going to work for your dad, who, Marine, pretty strict disciplinarian, I would gather, growing up.
Well, it's funny because a lot of people say, oh, you work for your dad. I'm like, you don't know my dad.
Right. I'm sure you probably got treated tougher than the other employees.
But you know what? I'll tell you, and it's the son of the dealer is a bad rap in the car business, and because most of them don't work, they don't earn their way.
Right.
I didn't get that, but I appreciate it because I learned. I learned the hard way. I had to earn it, I had to work, and I like that because I feel that I've gotten a lot of knowledge from him, from the managers I've worked with, all the other people I've worked with, and because the fact that if one guy was expected to do this, I'm expected to do this much more, and I'm okay with that. Because I think that if you want the respect of your employees and the people you work with, they gotta know that you can do it too.
And Sam, you were in charge at the time. I always say I could have worked for my dad. I'm not sure if I could have my kids work for me. So you probably had a few reservations about bringing your kids on board too, I would imagine.
Well, you do, because you don't want them to fail. And a lot of people go to work for their family, and they don't realize that they got to put out. And it's just like John's friends always called him part with a gold spoon in his mouth. Well, John wasn't. We weren't the ones that started the place, and we earned everything we got. And I'll tell you, John was a hard worker, and I gotta be real honest. We wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for him. And we get too old for it. It takes youth to make it work.
It probably helped a little bit that you started off mowing grass and cleaning grease pits instead of just went straight to sales manager or something like that.
The people you work with appreciate that. And there's a lot of them that have been there that were there before I came in there, and they're still there. So they remember me from those days, when I was just doing whatever.
One big thing, Nick, that we're both really lucky for was my partner, Bill Roberts, who's deceased. Because Bill took me under his wing. And when John came along, he took John under his wing. And when you got a guy like that you can look up to and mentor to, that tells you what's going on and what's not going on, it's invaluable.
I think sometimes too, from my standpoint, I've got a 16-year-old, and sometimes it helps for him to hear from a different voice. So instead of John hearing it from you, he might have been hearing it from Bill, and it might have a little bit more impact. not coming from your dad, I suppose. So.
When I went from being a salesperson to a manager, Bill actually called me in his office and he said, "You're not going to make it." He said, he goes, "I know your dad wants you to have this chance, but you won't make it. I'm telling you." And I was really upset, you know.
Sure.
And I went home and I told my wife about it, and I was really aggravated, you know. And you know, now looking back, I know what he was doing now, and ironically, I couldn't tell you how long it's been because it's been a long time ago, but several months had gone by, and he'd come by the desk. He says, "What are you doing for lunch?" And I'd have an excuse. And I gotta do this, I gotta do that. And I did that for about a week, and I finally realized I'm not good getting out of this.
Right.
So I finally said, the next time he came up and asked me, and I said, "Yeah, I can go to lunch." So I went to lunch with him. And what he did was, he told me, he says, "You know, when I'm wrong, but I gotta tell you, I didn't think you'd make it, but you did. You're doing a hell of a job." And that, you know, at the time was pretty big. I thought, that one, it was good that he would do that, but then looking back on it, I really don't think he ever meant that I would fail. I think it was a challenge. He laid that out there for me to test me,
Right.
and just to say, okay, I don't think you can do it. Show me, you know. But Bill was a lot like Dad in that neither one sugarcoated anything with me. Neither one coddled me. You know, they throw you out there. You know, sometimes you'd sink. You know, sometimes you wouldn't, but they'd always be there to pull you back up. You know, but to me, that's how you learn. You know.
Sure. Is there a difference in your relationship at work and, say, around the Thanksgiving dinner table?
It gets touchy once in a while, but
No, you
I
know,
can't imagine that.
I gotta say that I think the fact that we've done it for so long, it's easy to draw that line.
Sure.
Now, don't get me wrong. Well, it's not unusual. We'll be talking business at family functions, but we can have a disagreement at work. But if we're at dinner the next night, it's family, and we're not talking about that disagreement we had at work the other day. I think we get along exceptionally well. I really do.
Yeah.
And,
I'll agree with that.
Well, and it really is truly a family business. John's not the only family member involved in it as well. So
I am now.
you are now at the moment, but there's been others along the line, of
we
course.
lost Sam a couple of years
Yeah,
ago.
Yeah.
right. So tell us a little bit about just some of the changes that have taken place in the business in the last 5 to 10 years. I know you guys have added a lot of things, and certainly it's a full-service dealership.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest change that we've had of recent is in the service area. I mean, we acquired a new service manager in January. Jack Fegley, and he's doing a phenomenal job for us. That service end of the business is growing like crazy. If you know, the people always talk about the average age of the fleet. In other words, the cars that are on the road today, it's over 11 years old right now. And what that means is you got a lot of people on the road getting service work done on their cars. So as much as the sales end is good for the business, the service end is constantly growing. And dealing with those challenges, getting good technicians, the efficiencies you need back there, and the service levels you need for your customers, having somebody can manage all that. He does a really good job for us. And you know, one of the challenges is with the quick lane. The whole idea of that was a no appointment necessary. Well, with the levels you do right now and trying to manage the amount of people you have, it's kind of hard to do. So it's kind of been a challenge for Jack, but he's doing a really good job of it, and we're getting it all figured out. And he's been a really good hire for us.
Sure, there are. It's interesting at a car dealership. A lot of people don't realize how many different areas there are to manage, and the quick lane is one of them. Obviously, used cars to pre-owned vehicles, new cars. So there's a lot of different areas to manage. How do you guys manage to juggle that so well?
Good people. I mean, truly good people. I mean, you got
We got a great team.
Yeah, and no matter how good you are, you're only as good as the people you surround yourself with. And we think we've got a great team up there. We actually we have the highest number of technicians we've ever had employed at a place right now, service technicians, because of the growth back there. And that's hard to find the right people. But you know, he's really good at building the team and getting the team to work together. And the same way with the front. You know, you got to have people work, but they got to have a little fun at work too. I mean, you got to kind of, you know, I've always said that a guy if you can't come to work and be excited about where you're going, you need to find another job.
Sure.
You know, and that's one thing that I think is pretty evident, that when you get in there, like whether it's walking through the service department or in the sales department, the people there are having a good time. They enjoy working there. You know, and to me that's part of of making it a good business is making it a place people want to be, whether it be an employee or a customer coming in.
Sure. We're going to take a brief time out. We'll pause and come back with part 2.